I'll start. Hello, Norm. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're about to start now.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our webinar. And tonight we have Clint. And before I introduce him, let's start with prayer. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we can come together in this live webinar. And we ask that your Holy Spirit will guide Clint as he shares his journey for everyone to learn. And we thank you for the technology. We pray that it will be seamless and the technology will cooperate. And thank you for answering our prayers. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, for the title of our presentation tonight is Off-Grid Living, and Clint will be sharing his story. We were there in his property last Friday and Saturday, and we've got some clips to share for you about his setup. And Clint will share how God led his family to their country bush block, and he will also share the design and implementation of their off-grid living solution. So for those of you who don't know Clint, he is a husband to Kylie, father to 3 awesome men, and passionately attempting to follow the blueprint for country living in these last days. So thank you, Clint. Over to you. God bless.
No probs. Thanks for the opportunity. I've never actually been on a webinar, so it's a new experience for me. And what I plan to do is just possibly get to know you guys just a little bit to see where your key interests are. Maybe now I can weave some extra information in, possibly if I know a bit more about. So it's good to see Jason's name there, mate. Welcome. And I'm not sure it's yourself or your wife on, but
no, that's me. Definitely me.
Good to hear your voice, mate. But so I guess first question would be actually not the first question, just a bit of an overview. So I'm just going to share our sort of story, how we got to our property, reasons, God's leading, then just a bit of insights into our process that we went through. And from there, I will just briefly go over some areas. And then I guess if there's areas of interest for you participants here, I can go into more detail, answer questions on those, and we can sort of cover those areas a bit more detail. So I hope that all makes sense. But yeah, just feel free to jump in if you have questions, I guess, as well. I guess that sort of works pretty easy, Benj, I guess. Does that sound good? Yep.
Okay.
So just first of all, Norman, I can't quite see. I've got on the little iPad. My screen's pretty small, and I don't think I've met before. I just get a feel. So I know Jason's already got a rural property. Bridget and Candy, do you guys? I think Bridget, you're in the city by memory. Is that correct? And I'm not sure about Candy.
Yep, we're still in the city and still looking.
Still looking. Yep. No probs. And Candy?
We're in Capel.
In Capel. Oh, wonderful. So you're in the town side. Are you looking to move to land, or are you looking for off-grid sort of solution?
We've got 1.5 acres at the moment. Yeah.
Yep. Lovely. And okay, great. Too easy. All right. Well, I'll just tell you a bit of our story. It's our story, but it's God's glory, isn't it? And so just briefly, a little bit about me, first of all, for those that don't know me. My ancestors on my dad's side were from Bukhara, on the Grenna Flats there, and they were visited by Ali, Brother Riki, in the early 1890s, and they became Seventh-day Adventists from there, that side. On my mother's side, that's the Websters, so that's the Webster clan in Perth, and you may have heard of Pastor Gary Webster and Cher and some of my aunties and uncles. That's sort of a bit of background for my family. I grew up on a farm as a young kid, did schooling in the country, moved to Perth for my high schooling at Carmel, and then I commenced a heavy-duty mechanic apprenticeship and completed my apprenticeship, got my trade certificate in heavy-duty mechanics. Married my lovely wife, Kylie, in 1999, and during that time I was having a spiritual renaissance, and God ended up calling me through that experience out of my trade into canvassing. And I began in February 2000. So shortly after beginning canvassing, I had a burden for the Southwest. I grew up down this way and there was no one down here. So my wife and I moved down to the Prongrupps in 2000 and onto a farm, rented a farmhouse. From there, we moved into a bus, and that's when the kids started to come along. I've got 3 boys. And finally, we purchased a house around about 2007 in a little townlet called Narraka between Mount Barker and Albany. Kids got older. We really had been reading and studying, and we knew the blueprint and felt really impressed about the times we were living in. And we were seeking God's will for a larger property for our boys. We were in quite a small block, and we were seeking some more land. And the context of that was also the times which you're living and the context of the counsel that we've been given. So that was our desire. We looked at a number of properties, and it took some time through the process. We knew the area because we've been living in the area for some time, which is very helpful if you're looking for land, to know where the rainfall is, where the good groundwater is, things like that, seasonal history, talking to the locals. And God really came through with a property for us. It was a bush block. It wasn't actually advertised on the market. We had no idea about it, but through looking for a small house or transportable to relocate onto a future property that we're looking to secure, we found out about this bush block and talked to the owner, and it was a real whirlwind. We had our property for sale, and there was a lot of multiple things that had to line up. There was time constraints. There was, for example, we're surrounded by National Park on 3 sides, and we have a river reserve at the front, so we have no legal road access into our property. We could not get approval to put a building on the property until we knew that we could clear. We had to get approval through from that, and that all had to happen in the background of lining up with settlements for people that were purchasing our property and time frames. So God really worked. There's a whole bunch of wonderful miracles that God performed through there, and that's a story for another time. But we found this property. We knew it would have challenges. We weren't necessarily looking for an off-grid property at the time, but it was land that was cheap because it was undeveloped. It was virgin bush, a very old title from the late 1800s. And we knew it'd have a lot of challenges. First was access, and then we knew that getting power to the property would be out of the question. Any other services would be as well. So we knew that we'd be looking at being off-grid totally. So this was in 2009, and the property settled. We had approval to clear. We had approval for a building permit. It was a catch-22 for a bit, because the people that were going to tick off on us being able to clear some forest actually wanted to know that we could actually put a building there. But the people that were going to give our building approval at the Shire says, we need to know you're going to be able to clear. So it was a bit of a deadlock for a bit, but we worked through that, and we commenced. Once that property settled and we secured, we had been looking at housing options. We didn't want to be long-term building where I was still working as an LE, and we were heading into, it was winter. I didn't want to be constructing during winter. We had a house sit for 10 weeks in the meantime, because we had moved out of our property. And so we were blessed to find a transportable house off of Gumtree. The first time I come across Gumtree. And so we negotiated a house off Gumtree and had it delivered on 3 separate trucks. It was a real mission, getting those trucks in across the river, through the neighbours, through a strip of national park, and finally where it was to sit. We put that on hog stacked on some sleepers and had the plumber turn up. We hooked in septic tanks and a leach drain system, installed a rainwater tank, replaced the gutters that had been damaged, and we moved in to the house 10 weeks after we bought the property. So we had to clear the bush to make room, clear a track to get the house in. And it was 10 weeks later. So we moved in very simply. We had no power. We had candles for 6 months, a small generator if we needed to run a water pump. And that was us. But we were loving it. We felt like we had this new freedom, this space around us. The kids could really roam and enjoy that. So that was great. For those that don't know the area we're in between Albany, Denmark and Mount Barker. Make like a triangle. We're in the centre of the triangle, a place called Redmond West. So just some things to think about. We had to process through the considerations. We wanted a place that we had firewood because, like a lot of people who grew up in the country or on farms, firewood's a great source of energy. It's a carbon neutral source of energy. And we wanted something that was close and had enough firewood to keep our home warmed and our hot water heated and so forth. And so that was ticked. We were after a good rainfall area, and it is, and we were pretty certain it'd be good groundwater with a large catchment. Behind our properties, 400,000 hectares of Walpole wilderness, which stretches right across 3 past the top of Walpole. So those things were there. It was actually a real blessing. We used to come to that little bridge with our boys for Sabbath walks, and they'd play and throw rocks in the stream. And we said, wouldn't it be lovely to live across the other side of that bridge in the bush there? It'd be nice and quiet in amongst nature. And it was just a number of years later, that's where God had us. So he really works when we lay our plans and our desires at his feet. Budgeting was a part. We knew our place was selling, and we had to do research on estimates of all sorts of options from, for example, rainwater tanks, house, transporting of house, plumbing, electrical, shed costs. We actually moved in 2 sea containers. We loaded all of our house into one 40-foot sea container, and that was sitting there ready to go as soon as the place was cleared. And we had a deck for it to sit on. They were offloaded and ready to go. Moving stuff straight out of the sea container into the house. So everything was prioritised with the money we had available, and we planned the works out with our budget and with those priorities and just move forward and accomplish as much as we could. So we were blessed to be able to sell our small home in Narrackup and to have enough money to buy the bush block, put a house on it, put a shed on it, a rainwater tank, all the basic infrastructure so that we could move in and live. And then basically the money was all allocated for, and it was a blessing to be able to move in and have that roof over our head. A couple of things we had to think about as well. Obviously solar. At that time, the government had what was called a remote area power scheme running, which actually assisted people in remote areas are not able to access the grid, or within a certain distance from connecting to the grid, there was an option where they would actually put up 50% of the costs for all the renewable equipment that we would need. We were so blessed to be able to get in on that. We were one of the last handful of people were told that were allocated that money for that scheme. It was on a Thursday. We found out the scheme closed on the Friday. All monies were allocated, and then that program's never started up since, which is a huge blessing because back in 2009, solar panels and all the associated equipment was actually quite considerably more expensive because of the scale at the time. It's obviously economy of scale has kicked in now, and prices have come down substantially with quite a lot of the equipment. But at the time, that was a real boost. We were able to set up our initial solar system. Just explain a little bit. the best way to go about setting up solar is you do a load analysis, which is basically looking at all your appliances and how long they'll be running for during the day, calculating out what that load is, that requirement of energy, and then designing a system that will suit that requirement. So this is normally done by an installer. They're trained to do this. They have calculators. They know your location. They work out the approximate sun hours that are going to hit the panel. And so at that time, we knew our load was going to be less, around about 8 kilowatt hours a day, which is quite small. But we asked if we could have it designed to suit 10 kilowatt hours of usage. So just a short explanation there. There's a difference between power and energy. So power is usually how solar systems are rated, and it's usually rated on the peak output of the solar array, which is a number of solar panels connected in the system. So our system's rating as far as the solar was 3,150 watts. That was the total number of watts on the roof of our shed. We actually built the shed to accommodate the best sort of angle for summer and winter solar radiation at our property. And so it resulted in a pitch on our roof of 30 degrees. So the other aspect is energy. So the 10 kilowatt hour was our design parameters. That was the 10 kilowatt hours per day. That's using basically 1 kilowatt an hour for 10 hours, or if you're using 10 kilowatts of power for 1 hour. So for a given example, a 10 kilowatt an hour a day would be like running 10 100 watt light bulbs, having them all switched on, and they would run for 10 hours. That would be 10 kilowatt hours of energy usage. So you don't necessarily need 10 kilowatts of solar panels, because obviously you get quite a number of hours of solar output during the day. It's like a bell curve. In the morning, it's quite a low output. It ramps up during the middle morning, peaks obviously around the middle of the day, and then drops off in the afternoon. So the chunk in the middle, our 3,150 watts of solar on the roof would easily cover our 10 kilowatt hour usage for the day. So that's what happened. We got that solar system put up. It worked well. We had lead acid batteries. We were glad to get off of using candles. We titled that after a number of months. We were 6 months on candles. And then the next aspect we focused on after we had our basic infrastructure, our wastewater treatment, our rainwater catchment, our communications. Telstra had what was called a fixed wireless terminal, where you could just use a 3G signal back then through an antenna on your roof. It would be converted to a telephone line and a fax line. That also had its own little power system. It had one solar panel on the roof and a charge regulator inside, and then a gel battery, which would power that up. Welcome, Bruce. So that was done. The next priority for us then was putting our fruit trees in, because, as you know, they can take some time to establish. We put in a nice sized mixed orchard of citrus, stone fruits and pome fruits, and wish I had to put more nut trees in. They weren't really available from the supplier we got most of our trees from at the time, and I just didn't get around to it, and just took some time before I got a few almonds. But I wish I had have got way more nut trees, some macadamias and pistachios and walnuts and so forth. We do have a few almonds now, and some macadamias that are still young and not bearing, and also one walnut tree. But I was really disappointed with that. I should have prioritised that. Other aspects of our journey was trying to build in redundancy to our home. Our home was efficient as far as we had wood-fired heating, because that's some of the biggest, as you'd know, that's some of the biggest energy consumption in your house, is heating your house and cooling your house and heating your hot water. So we had our wood fire in. We also, the blessing of buying the house off Gumtree, it came fully kitted out. It obviously had a hot water system, a gas hot water system already, and it had a wood fire in the lounge room. and a kitchen, which we replaced with another second-hand kitchen, and we also put in a slow combustion wood fire in the kitchen at a later date. So building in redundancy and efficiency into our home meant that we weren't looking at the time with the size of our solar system. We were looking for a low energy usage home. We got rid of our electric oven. We went for gas. We had gas cooktop as well. Gas, obviously the gas hot water system was already in there. And in time, we added a wetback to the fire, which is basically just using the heat of the fire to heat up water and take that heated water back in and transfer it into our hot water tank. So as the fire is running through winter, we're getting our hot water at the same time. This is what a lot of farmers and farms have on their property. And we did the same. We also had the gas, instant gas, and we got the plumber to hook in that in a way that we could flip between. Once we added the solar hot water as well, we got it set up so we could flip between gas, instant gas, or we could flip it through to the solar hot water tank, and we could run through there. And of course, the solar hot water tank, I also plumbed in the wetback off of our slow combustion fire. So it was being heated if there was solar radiation from the sun, and if the fire was running in winter, which is generally when you're not getting a lot of sun, the fire is generally running, and we're good for hot water. So that was great. We went for a evacuated glass tube solar hot water system. We purchased it secondhand from a company, not secondhand, sorry, cheap from a company that was being bought out from a larger company, and it wasn't branded for what they were going and warranty issues, and so we got the equipment cheap. Sourced a tank, 400 litre split tank. So it's not a tank on the roof, it's a tank in our laundry right behind the fire, so it's efficient to get the heat from the fire. And we set that up. So that made a huge difference. Instead of a gas bottle that we were using about every 8 weeks, when we had a family of 5 of us living there, it was cut right down just to a few gas bottles a year. And then once we added the wetback a little later, really we only go through maybe 2 gas bottles a year, and that's our only energy input to our home, apart from maybe a little bit of diesel for the generator that doesn't run very much anymore because of an upgrade, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So that's what I mean by redundancy. There's different ways to have energy. Not all my eggs are in one basket. If the power goes down, we still have opportunity for running water. We still have an opportunity for hot water, and so forth. So having different, not relying all on one system. Albeit now our system is larger, we are plugging more electrical items in and focusing more on electrical load rather than petrol driven or so forth. So I will be heating in looking at relying more on electrical. So we've got some induction cooktops. So in summer, when we don't want to run a wood fire in the kitchen, we can sit those on top of the wood fire hot plates, and we can cook away just using the sun, straight through from the sun, which is great. So that's just a bit of an overview of our story and where we're at. We've obviously been here since 2009 now. The orchard's in full production. We do not have to buy much fruit at all, a few bananas maybe. We have integrated chooks into our food growing system. We also are blessed to put down a bore, which was great. And water's great for irrigating veggies, fruit trees, and so forth. That's really what there's a huge blessing to have a bore, to have water on tap like that. So that's just a bit of a brief overview. I'm happy to talk on any of those areas a bit more in depth. I've even got some paper here that I can draw some diagrams or explanations if there's some information you need. I have also some resources possibly to share. Maybe I can share those maybe now. I didn't actually have those resources when I started, but I can share them with you now. I had this resource here. This was one of my late father's books. And for those of you that might have heard of permaculture, this is Permaculture 1 by Bill Mollison, one of the founders of the permaculture growing system. So this just gives you an understanding about efficient ways to grow food and make ecosystem around your house that supports you and the animals that you may have on your dwelling. This was gifted to me by a good friend and haven't quite finished reading through it. I'm maybe halfway through it. I've got through. This is a guy from Perth, Western Australia. His name is Chris Ferreira, and the book is called A Place in the Country. Really well illustrated. It goes through all the aspects of procuring a property. I'll just read out some of the index here for you. How do you choose a perfect patch? Some factors to consider: getting it right the first time. Once you've bought a property, there's a number of chapters there. Part 2, planning, starting on the front foot, being proactive with fire safety. That's another thing we had to address, being surrounded by a dry or wet sclerophyll forest, jarrahs, she oaks, marries, and so forth. We pushed big buffer zones out to the north and to our west for our hottest fire fronts. After talking to the local fireys and finding out where the hottest fires come from, we pushed out big buffer zones. And a rough rule of thumb is you need 4 times the height of the vegetation surrounding your property. You need that clearance from your infrastructure. So the trees are generally 10 metres high. You'd want at least a minimum of 40 metres between those trees and your house or your shed. We pushed back well over 100 metres and further even on our western front. The southern front, not so far, because usually that's a cool change. There still is a risk, but we've mitigated in other ways for that. So yeah, bushfires, it's a big part of living in the bush or on the land. Talks about some of the animals you might want to do, soil, getting your soil right, pastures, trees, planting trees, dealing with water, runoff, bringing the landscape to life, even making income. You want to make your property profitable. And then in the appendices, there's a lot of good information too. So I can recommend that book for sure. It would have been handy to have, but I was blessed to have a fair bit of the knowledge growing up on a farm and just having interest and just picking up tidbits over the time. But it's a great resource. The other resource that probably maybe Benji could put up or share the link is when I was selling some solar systems on the East Coast for a short while. There was a book put together by an Australian called Finn Peacock. He's an electrical engineer, and he's put together a really good source of information for people that don't know anything about solar power systems, mostly to do with grid connects, I would say, by memory, but good overall understanding about how the systems work, how to go about procuring it, how to sort through that, and sizing of batteries and things like that, and the different pros and cons. And there's a lot of helpful information on his website as well. So that's available too. It's called The Good Solar Guide, The Good Solar Guide by Finn Peacock. So that's just a bit of an overview. We feel very blessed to have our property sort of producing and matured. We're obviously still, I was an LE for the 9 years. I was an LE for 18 years, and 9 years of that was living at this property. So we're situated beautifully, just half an hour out of 3 towns, one large regional city, obviously of Albany, and then we were able to travel. I was able to travel around the small country towns and minister while I was developing. As the money came in, we'd purchase a little bit more, and I'm still doing that. We still haven't got a round on the front of the house, as you can see by that first picture, and I'm still adding infrastructure, new raised garden beds, expanding our growing areas as well at the moment, and making additions to our shed for more productive use of the space. So that's just a bit of an overview. I hope that it's been encouraging. If there's any areas now, it's probably a good time to talk about any areas you want to talk more about, any questions, or if you want me to draw some pictures or diagrams, or even maybe hold up a picture of anything else you might think of that might be helpful, let me know.
Thanks, Clint. Do you want me to share the video now that we've
Whenever you think
recorded
that's
in your
best. Whenever you think
Okay.
that's best, mate.
All right, I'll put that up now. I'll share the link and let me know if you can see the presentation.
You have the photos up.
Okay. All right. So I'll play the video now.
Hey guys, great to have this opportunity to share with you. Benji's just asked to give a bit of a rundown of our property and go over some of the basics of our solar power generation system. So we've been blessed to have been here since 2009. We purchased the property. It was just a bush block, 100 acres of bush, surrounded by national park on three sides with the river reserve on the eastern boundary. We knew we'd have to be off grid here because it was too far from the grid and too expensive. So there's actually no services, no power lines, cables, water, anything to our property. So we knew we'd have to be self-sufficient for our power, for our waste, septic tanks and so forth, and for our rainwater catchment, drinking water and irrigation and so forth. So yeah, just briefly you can see in the background on the shed, the solar up there, the middle panels with the white splotches. That's our first install, 2009. There was 18 panels, they're just 175 watts each. So it was a total of 3,150 watts of solar array. And we were blessed just a few years ago, God providentially blessed. You know, we're told that God has 1,000 ways to provide for us, of which we know nothing, and God did that for us. We had batteries that needed replacing and to expand our system, and God worked in marvellous ways to assist with us to do that. And you can see the darker panels around the top and down on the lower roof. That was an addition just recently. So that's just designed to collect a good amount of solar at this location. The pitch of the roof, research, it's a 30-degree pitch, is good for where we are to summer and winter balance.
And for good for WA
for here in this location, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, we can go have a look at the power room. Obviously the sun, the photons hit there, generates the electron flow, and then it's cabled down to the power room, and we'll show you up there and how it works.
How big is the solar power in terms of kilowatts it's generating?
Okay, so
the solar panels.
Yep. So the original solar array, that's what's called a DC coupled system, and that's 3,150 watts of solar. Panels have been added. They are newer and larger, more efficient, and there's around, I think it's about 7.6 kilowatts. So it's around
Okay,
over
so
10 kilowatts
10
of solar
kilowatts,
in
yeah.
total.
So 3 kilowatts plus 7 kilowatts.
Yeah. Hey guys.
All right, so we'll go to the control room where Clint will explain.
We are in the power room. It comes down through this piece of equipment. It's called your solar regulator. It's basically modulates the power coming in through to the system. This is the brains of our power system. It's Australian-made inverter by Selectronic. So this is tracking everything that's coming into the system via the solar panels off the roof of the shed. It's all in the house, and it's balancing that with charging the batteries. So this is really the brains. This is the original setup from 2009. These two bits of equipment, obviously the switchboard and in here, so forth. So it's like this is our main meter board or power board. This is our meter. You actually have a meter like a normal meter, but we're not connected to the grid, obviously. It just tracks how many kilowatt hours are being generated. And then obviously the safety equipment through there. Once the power is generated by the inverter, it sends that through the cables to the house at 240 volts, and everything in our house runs at 240 volts like a standard house. So that system served us well for many years until the lead acid batteries started failing. They lasted a good while, around about 13 years. And then we're blessed to upgrade to some lithium batteries, which Benji will just show you in a tick.
So that's
Just
the
there.
lead acid.
So they just serve a rack mount phosphate chemistry. Strain those. They've got built-in battery management cells from China. They're called Power Plus and Eco 4840. So it's a 48 volt system. Ours is a 48 volt platform, and then they're 4 kilowatt hours. Each block is 4 kilowatt hours of storage. So there's a total of 20 kilowatt hours of storage in those 5 batteries. So we upgraded our system not long ago when we replaced our batteries. We added extra solar on the roof, those dark panels you saw. And then this is a Fronius Primo inverter. So this also generates 240 volts. On the roof. They feed straight into this inverter, and then it actually has been tricked up by the company that here. So the brains of the system actually controls this inverter that Benji is showing now. Output of this inverter as well. So the benefit of this is electricity that comes from a solar array on the roof comes straight into here. You can see the readout right now on the screen. So it's 480 watts has been generated needs at the time, and the main inverter tells it whether to ramp up or ramp down with its output. So the 240 that's generated straight from here, it doesn't go into the battery, it goes straight out through to the load in the house or the shed or wherever it may be. Obviously, there's a built-in generator, it's a backup generator. So that's designed.
So this sorry about the video. Did you see the first video or not? No videos at all. Just the audio.
I saw the first one, Benji. The second one just was a still, and just till now it's changed one to a different screenshot, but there was no motion on the second one on mine.
Okay. I've got a photo of the equipment that you explained on the video, Clint. Maybe I'll show that here. Can you see that now?
Yeah, I can see some photos. Yep.
Yep. So that's the generator, and so maybe you can you can explain in a summary, Clint.
Sure. Of the from the photos.
The photos here. I've got of the mains panels and the regulator, the inverter, the lead acid batteries, the Fronius.
Yep.
So which one do you want
if you
to
can
explain?
start two photos back was the, so obviously the solar panels, and then we go in the power room. So the regulator, the black box up on the wall.
Yeah, that's the one.
No, that's the inverter.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. So guys, this is once the electricity flows in to this is called an MPPT charge regulator, solar charge regulator. So its job is to receive or the current, monitoring the current that's coming from the solar panels, and just modulate it to get the most efficient balance between voltage and amperage to feed into the batteries. Now the inverter, please, which is the yellow one, this electronic. Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
this is the
electronic.
brains of the system. This is an Australian-made inverter. It's an off-grid inverter or a hybrid inverter, so you can use this inverter connected to the grid as well as running off-grid. If the grid goes down automatically, it will flip to using off-grid systems with some extra equipment. Obviously, I'm not connected at all, so that's defunct in my system. So this is logging everything about the system, what you're using in your house, your load, your peak power generation of your solar panels, temperatures of the batteries. It's monitoring everything. Our system is designed such that we just need to keep some diesel in the generator and everything's done for us if we so want to. Or we can take control and switch on the generator manually, or we can adjust parameters on it. But everything's preset by the installer. And then you can also make adjustments in time as well. So that's the inverter. The inverter's actually an inverter charger. Sorry, and like I said, it's a 48-volt system. The benefits of a 48-volt system is that you have less power voltage drop with DC current in a 48-volt system. That's one benefit. It's just a more robust sort of a platform to run off of. There's more information we go into there, but we won't. So it also has a charger. So it's not only the brains, it receives information from the charge regulator and controls the battery state of charge, how much current should flow through to charge the batteries and how much is being used in your house and so forth. And it's continually adjusting to your usage. It will automatically turn on the generator if needed. It is also hooked. That's hooked in electrically right to our house as 240 volts. Once the current comes in through the charge regulator and through into the batteries, then it comes out of the batteries, is converted into 240 volts from a DC current, from 48-volt DC. It's converted into 240 volts by that inverter, and then it's sent through the cable to our house. On our house, we have a sub board, just like where the meter board used to be, on our front little veranda, and it comes into a house through the protection RCDs and so forth, and the rest of the house runs on all 240 equipment. So all the lighting's 240. Well, actually, we do have a lot of LED lights. They're not specifically 240, but 240 is running through all the house. All of our equipment's just like you have in a normal house. We have a nice big fridge and normal washing machines and so forth, and those sorts of things. We've just cut out anything, like I said before. We don't really use clothes dryer or electricity for, well, we didn't used to, sorry, when we had a smaller system. We were more careful with what we used. Now we've been more adding electrical loads into the system and making the most of that extra solar collection on the roof. So that's the original system. That's called a DC coupled. If there's any questions about that, it's not as efficient, but as a AC coupled system. And the next image, if you can show us the Fronius, please, Benji. So with the upgrade, when we added new solar, there's the old batteries. Sorry, just scroll past the batteries there. They're the old lead acid batteries, some of them. Here's the Fronius inverter. This was added on when we expanded our solar array. So this is a company you may be well familiar with. It's a very reputable brand, Fronius. It's what you'd see in a lot of city solar installations. It's a string inverter, and they generally send in connectors straight to the grid. It's not an off-grid inverter, but this has been modified. Its electronics has been modified. Its software has been modified to be able to have our other inverter communicate with it. So it's called a Selectronics certified Fronius model. So it's specially been updated and adjusted so that the Selectronic inverter can talk to this inverter and can control this inverter. So all the new black panels that were on the roof of the shed, they come through at a high voltage, which a lot of panels do these days. They don't come in at 12 volts. They come in at hundreds of volts. It could be 160 or 150 or whatever's stacked up and however your regulator's set up. This doesn't actually have a regulator on the wall like we looked at first. Power comes straight in to that from the solar panels, and then according to what's going on in our system, the other yellow inverter controls this inverter. If we, for example, all of a sudden switch on our induction cooktop, or my wife's blow drying her hair, and the batteries are fully charged, or even not, it will direct this inverter to start generating more 240 volt current, and that'll go straight to the load in the house or wherever it's being used. So it doesn't come down through a regulator into the batteries, back out of the batteries as a DC current, and then inverted into 240. It's converted to 240 straight from the solar panels at the Fronius inverter, and then sent to load. So this is called an AC couple system, where it's coming in and it's just directly AC straight to the load. It doesn't have to go into a battery bank and come out of the battery bank. So every time you change, you've got losses of efficiency there. It's a really brilliant idea. It means that if you want to enlarge your system, which is what we did, you can do it simply by doing it this way. We now have an extra 7.5 kilowatts of solar on the roof. And so that can come into our system and go straight to load, bypassing the batteries. If the batteries have been discharged overnight, which happens every night as a base load is running, as water pump for the shower is running, or washing machine, or whatever our power consumption has been during the evening, that extra capacity of solar will recharge our lithium batteries at a far faster rate. That's actually one of the benefits of lithium-ion batteries, is that they can receive a greater charge current, and they can charge far more rapidly than lead acid chemistry or some other chemistries. So our batteries will usually, if the sun up during the day, our batteries will usually be totally recharged from the consumption that we'd used the previous night by mid-morning. This also, for a commercial, if your power requirements grow, you can just add more solar panels if you've got the roof space, and then add another one of these Fronius inverters. And I think you can add up to about 5 per one Cellectronic inverter in your system. So you can really create a massive solar system if you need to, which is not what we need to, but we just feel we need to gear up for a greater load for the times ahead, and to be more efficient. Obviously, the more solar you have on your rooftop, you can have overcast weather and yet still generate enough to cover your base load power. So our generator runtime has just diminished to the point of insignificance. Whereas before, when we had the smaller solar array, during the dark depths of winter down here, the Jenny would run the switch on from time to time to boost the batteries up, because it wasn't getting enough solar coming in from the solar panels. But now with this addition, it's far more efficient, and because solar panels are much cheaper, it's sort of far cheaper to achieve that. So that's a bit of a rundown there, Benji. I guess if there's any questions or on any of what I've talked about, any more information, I'm not sure what the time frame is, constraints.
Thanks, Clint. So we now for question. You can unmute yourself, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can post your question on the chat. I'm monitoring it. Monitoring the chat box, and there are 9 people on YouTube that's watching live stream. So if you're on Zoom, just unmute yourself and ask Clint your question. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you so much, Clint. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Noam. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, and you too, Benji. And I wish I could put more people on here that I know, but we have a Pioneer Remnant group here in WA, and we go all the way down to Donnybrook and all the way back up to Quinns Rocks, and even went over to what's that place up north? Windaroo? Is it Windaroo? And you got Koro, and
Karoo.
Yeah. And there's a
up in the
place
wet
up
belt.
there. Yeah, the lady that runs up there is Jeannie. Do you know her?
Oh yeah, Jeannie. Yep, Jeannie Barrett. Yep.
Yeah, she's on her own up there.
Okay.
Yeah, and she leases out some of her property for that and all this stuff, but she's going to change that. But I think she's got 2,200, 2,400 acres, and she's looking for people to help. I don't have a car. That's why she said I needed a car to go help. But yeah, we're all searching down here as well. So I think if I could get other people to come in on this platform, I don't know if it's just for people that have taken the course, Benji. Is that right, or what?
It's for everyone. Please share the link and
Okay. All right.
and don't
Okay,
forget
I'll do
to
that.
subscribe and click the notification bell so whenever we're live streaming, you get the notification too. Do you have any question, Norm, or was that a comment and
I was wondering with the water system, you have a lake or a river going through your property?
Yeah, we have a river on our eastern boundary. We don't use that per se, apart from the boys. It's a boys' swimming hole.
Okay.
We all of our water's usage is taken care of by the rainwater. We have a couple of rainwater tanks. Have a 90,000 litre rainwater tank and then a 25,000 litre rainwater tank, which is plenty for us in our rainfall area to take the family through the dry seasons, and obviously the bore. We have our gardens and orchards all on automatic reticulation, and so that's all supplied by a submersible bore pump.
How deep is the bore and how many liters a minute do you have?
Sorry, say that again.
How many liters per minute do you have on the bore, and how deep is it?
Yeah, look, it's around about the water table's around about 6 meters down, and the bore pump we have is a Grundfos SP5A-12, which is around, I think by memory, it's around about 6,000 liters an hour. I think that pumps at around about that head. So yeah, it will fill up 1,000 litre tank in around about maybe 7 minutes, something like that, by memory.
Oh, yeah, that's good, huh?
Something like that. I mean, it's been a while. That's just sort of roughly off my head, but yeah, no, it's a good flow of water. Hasn't gone dry for us. It's been a real blessing.
Amen. Amen.
So it's very satisfying.
I had a pleasure. I'm sorry?
It's very satisfying in the summer to see the sun shining on the panels and the orchard getting reticulated just straight out of the energy from the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lord says to take care of your gardens and all that before you even build your house, huh? So you got to eat. Yeah. Well, thanks again for honoring us with your time. Thank you.
No, welcome. Privilege.
all right. Thanks, Norm. Anyone has got a question or comment? Just feel free to unmute yourself or write on the chat. Before we let Clint go. With the videos, I'll upload it to YouTube and we'll send out an email so that you can watch the YouTube videos that we've recorded in his property. And also the link that Clint mentioned about on the solar system link. So watch out for the email. All right. I think there's no more question. I've got a thumbs up here from Bridget. You have any question, Jason, or anyone? Or on the YouTube?
Questions about the hot water system. You had a few different languages which I've not heard about there, different systems which he's using. hot water and wood, and I think maybe a video would probably be good to sort of see what he's talking about, because I have no idea. But yeah, it's a good idea not to use one system or rely on one system.
Would a picture help at all, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? I'll just quickly draw up the hot water system so you can see. Any other questions while I'm drawing a couple of pictures?
Yeah, I had a question, Clint, about hydroelectric. Could you utilize something like that offshore river?
I looked into that when I was early stages of our property, before I knew how good solar was. I did look at and research at some paddle wheel hydro turbines. I looked at pumped hydro. I looked at the feasibility of pumped hydro because we have a bit of a hill. And we also purchased a wind turbine, second-hand wind turbine that had been unused. So I had it rewired to 48 volts, and we got a free 30-metre tower from an old newspaper printing site in Welshpool in Perth. So it just cost me the hire of a big crane and me to unbolt it and disassemble it. But it laid there unassembled, and because the solar panels perform so well and there's such less maintenance than a water, hydro turbine or a wind turbine. And it was going to cost me about 10 grand in concrete for a concrete footing for that turbine. So once we saw how well the solar worked in our location, we decided it was just not worth it. So we sold that equipment on.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
What would be the budget looking at your system, Clint, if someone would build that nowadays?
Good question. It's come down a lot. Panels have come down
So
a huge amount. But I would assist. Sorry?
You've got 10 kilowatt solar panels and 10 kilowatt batteries.
Yeah.
So that kind of, or what would be the range?
Yeah, it would be approximately. The generator doesn't do much anymore. I probably wouldn't get as big a generator, but it would. Initially, our system cost us 35, but the government put in the rest. So it was probably about a 70K system back then.
Wow.
So we wouldn't have been able to afford that. But it was far cheaper than connecting to the grid. The grid was going to be around 100K or more. So
how much did you say? Sorry. How much did you say? How much did you say?
70.
70, wow.
Yeah. So that was diesel generator. That was 48-volt battery bank, lead acid battery bank, the inverter or the panels, the racking install. Yeah, that was all there. So thankfully I only had to pay 35 for that. But I would say now, if you were to do it, it would be more likely around about in total, maybe closer to between 30, 35, somewhere there maybe. So it's basically you're paying ahead your power bills. It's not necessarily cheaper to have an off-grid solar system because you have batteries you have to replace. With lead acid, you're looking at sort of every 10 to sort of 14 years. So you're paying ahead where other people are paying power bills. So that's a bit of an idea there. That I'd say between 30 and 40. Now we have quite a large system now. Quite a large system. You don't need a system this large. We don't use anywhere near the capacity that we could have out of it at the moment. But I guess if more people are at our property and there's more load there, it's going to be able to cover that far easier. So you can either go for a super efficient home and have a small system and keep a battery bank small and keep it very tight and have substantially cheaper, or you can put a larger battery bank in. You're always best to go for as much solar as you can fit on your roof. That's the principle that we want, because solar panels are cheap. They're very reliable. They last a long time. My existing panels I put in 2009, they're still producing well. They've dropped a little, but they're still producing well. The equipment that was fitted in 2009, it's still only a fraction of its service life. So if you invest in quality equipment, it's going to last a long time. Here's a picture of the solar. It may help. And I'll explain it through. Okay, so hopefully you can see this okay. So this is basically the roof of our house. This is the evacuated tubes. We went for evacuated tubes. It was quite new technology when back in sort of 2010, 11, maybe 12, somewhere around there. You didn't see these around really at all. They're like vacuum flasks, so they're very efficient. The solar energy that hits these tubes is absorbed and you don't lose heat through them. Another benefit of them is that in high frost risk areas like which we are, there's no chance of the system freezing up and splitting or breaking or leaking into your rainwater. If you go for flat plate hot water, solar hot water systems in the frost area, usually they can have a valve like Benji said he's got. I wasn't familiar with that. Or they run antifreeze in them. But if that splits or some reason gets into your gutters and you're catching your rainwater, you get antifreeze in your rainwater tank, which is not the nicest, I'd imagine. So we have, initially we just had the gas hot water system, obviously, and that's a gas bottle outside. So it was a gas hot water system in our house. We added the solar hot water array on the roof. We've also got that on a tilt that sort of suits summer and winter. We don't want that steaming off and boiling in summer, and we don't want it too shallow for winter, too high for winter, sorry. It's a bit of a shallow angle. So what that does is that circulates through into our tank. Our tank is in our laundry, made a little cupboard for that. And the hot water comes through from the collector at the top. It's pumped down through into the tank, and the cold water from the bottom of the tank is taken back up, circulated back up to be heated. So obviously the bottom of the tank is the cooler water, the top of the tank is the hottest part. And that just continually circulates through the day. And it's continually heating up this water in the tank, and it's heating up and heating up. If there's not enough sun, we can switch that off and we can run off instant gas. Mainly we've got that isolated from the system and we run through this tank. Later on, we also added the wetback, which is the wood fire here. And that just has a couple of copper pipes. It has some copper pipes bolted to the side of the fire on the outside of the firebox, not on the inside of the firebox, is how I've designed it. And then it runs through. I ordered this tank specially because it has an internal copper coil that runs in here and then back out. So as the fire is running, the cool water, it's called thermosiphon. As it heats up, it rises and it comes into here, and then as it goes in here, the water's cooler, so it cools and it cycles down just by exchanging the heat from the hot water fire that's come from the fire into the water of my solar tank. Then the water's cool, it gets drawn back into the wetback on the side of the fire, and it repeats the process. And so that's basically how that works. So I sourced this equipment from a retailer in Perth, and I sourced this tank from Melbourne. I can't remember who it was. Pretty sure it was imported from China. So it's a 400-litre tank. I wanted to keep the weight off of my roof and have it down closer to the fire so it's more efficient. It's only around about a 1.2 metre run to get from the fire into this tank. So it's quite efficient through there. So does that answer the question there, Jason?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I'll have to look at this system. I don't know. Is this still available? Something like that?
Absolutely. Yep. So there's a couple of companies you can Google. You've got, by memory, AAE. AAE used to be a company. I think Solar Heart do an evacuated tube collector. and then you just have to find like solar hot water tank. Search for solar hot water tank. Maybe we'd wet the word wetback or wetback coil or something, and you'll probably find these tanks through there. One upgrade I have to do with this tank is now we have more solar energy available. I'd like to get the electrician to end up putting a booster in here. Ideally, meant to have a booster in these tanks anyway, because you can end up with Legionella. I think it's Legionella bacteria breeding up if the water's not circulating. It's at right temperatures.
Yeah.
So yeah, but with the hot water boost through here, it's been fine, and our system's been coping fine. But being able to have that switch on later in the day automatically to come on, we can have the heater coil that comes into this tank already. We can have it hooked up to our system so that it'll come on a timer, and any energy that's coming in from the sun, if the tank can be heated up a bit more, well, then the energy will just go into heating up our hot water. So just using that energy as efficiently as we can. So yeah.
We've got our Solar Heart hot water system, but
Yep.
we've got a booster in it which uses the grid, and I think that's send our power up almost twice what our power should be based on the houses around us. We're using almost twice the amount of power as they are, because that booster is always on.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what you can do for that, Jason, is you can get a this is on the East Coast. I'm not sure about WA, but they've got what's called a dedicated feed. And you can get a dedicated feed on the East Coast, I'm guessing here as well, and it's a cheaper tariff. And you can just have that dedicated feed, and you can have timer, so you can switch on that booster at certain times when the power's the cheapest. So you can save considerable money on your power bill doing that.
Yeah, I'll consider that. Thanks, Clint.
Thank you so much. And we have a comment here from YouTube. Hello from John Horvat. Really appreciate your presentation. Thanks.
Always welcome, John.
Okay, so if there's no more question, we appreciate your presentation, Clint. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey and your technical know-how.
Privilege.
And
Thanks, Benji.
Privilege.
yes, and Clint will be coming for the growth conference. So if you have further questions, you can have a chat with him. And also would like to remind you we're 2 weeks away from the growth conference. So register now at www.shalem.net if you're planning to come, because the number of catering is capped at 60, and also our accommodation. So yeah, if you're planning to come, register as soon as possible. So thank you, Clint. Can I ask you to close with a prayer, and any words you want to share before prayer?
No props. Yeah, I just guess it's just been our journey. We've just been so appreciative of the counsel we've been given. And we've been blessed to be on the same path, husband and wife, for following that counsel as close as we can with our kids, and with our location of the family home, and also insights we have into conditions that will be in the future. And so being able to act in faith on the belief that those words are true. And it's been a wonderful journey. We've seen the Lord help us continue along the way, and we're grateful for that. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. I'll be at Growth on that conference. If you want some more info or some more technical information or explanations and so forth, I'm more than happy to help out there. So let's just close with a prayer, hey? Father in heaven, we thank you so much that you are an all-knowing, all-wise God. We thank you also for the excellent wisdom that you have put into your servant for our times. We thank you for the ministry of the Spirit of Prophecy, and we thank you that you are a God that walks with us, that guides us and leads us. And I pray for each and every person that has listened tonight and has desire to follow your blueprint. May they be encouraged and inspired from how you have blessed us in our journey, and that they can know that the same God will be with them as they plan and seek your will and guidance. Lord, we thank you that we know that your coming is soon. We can look forward to that with confidence and joy. Help us to be willing servants and efficient labourers in your vineyard.